CBS News polling shows just over 50% of likely voters say abortion is a major factor in their vote this election. Democrats have been fighting for reproductive rights and have made it a focal point of this campaign cycle. One person joining that is New Hampshire's Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan. She's recently shared her own story of loss after suffering a miscarriage decades ago. Senator, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. I really appreciate it.
I want to put one of your quotes up on the screen. It was very powerful and it struck me. You said, "I'm grateful that it never occurred to me that I would risk being prosecuted for getting health care. The ramifications that I did experience were hard enough. The grief was hard enough." Why have you chosen to come forward and share your story?
Look, it's really important for people to understand the consequences that the abortion ban that Donald Trump made sure happened. He appointed the judges, of course, who overturned Roe v. Wade, and as a result, we see abortion bans across the state like the ones you've been covering. And it's really important that people understand what the consequences of these are. I have been talking about the miscarriage I had over 30 years ago. This was a pregnancy my husband and I very, very much wanted. We had begun telling people about it because I was so morning sick I couldn't hide it in the early stages. And then I went in for my usual 12-week checkup, and they didn't hear a heartbeat. My doctor said, "That's weird." She sent me for an ultrasound the next day. She told me she thought it was fine. It was just the position of the fetus. And then the radiologist came in and said, "I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. It looks like this fetus stopped growing 2 weeks ago." So I needed this D&C procedure. I went to my doctor the next day. I was devastated. I was confused. She and I talked about what procedure I needed, and she explained that I needed this D&C procedure to remove the tissue. My body hadn't expelled any of it, to prevent things like septic infection. And I tell this story because 30 years ago, I had the right to talk with my doctor about this procedure, decide that that's a procedure I would undergo, and it's a procedure that's also used sometimes for abortions. It never occurred to me, as hard as this was, as hard as it was for my husband and me, that I would have to justify the procedure at some point, or that my doctor would have to call up the hospital lawyer in the examining room and find out whether she could do this procedure. What we're seeing now are terrible and tragic stories like the ones we just heard about in Texas, but we're also seeing women being detained while they are investigated after they have a miscarriage, while the state decides whether it was a miscarriage or an abortion, and whether to prosecute a woman as a result. I grieved terribly for the loss of this pregnancy, as did my husband. We were blessed several months later. We became pregnant again, and our daughter, who is now 31, is the result. We have 2 wonderful adult children. But this is what's at stake in this election for women. This is about whether we are going to be fully relegated to second-class citizenship, or whether we're going to be able to make our own health care decisions. And at the top of the ticket, you have Kamala Harris running, who wants to restore the rights that we had under Roe. We need to move forward and make sure that we're not saying that politicians somehow are going to be able to envision every complication and health risks that can come up in a pregnancy. They happen throughout pregnancy. We need to trust women and their doctors to make these decisions. Otherwise, the consequences are really, really significant and harmful for women, for their health. And they also discourage doctors from going into to reproductive health care. And this is at a time when we have fewer and fewer doctors practicing this kind of care, and where we have more and more maternal health deserts around the country.
Senator,
so these are consequences that I hope every woman will think about, and men, too.
Senator, we know the argument from many Republicans that abortion should be an issue for the states to decide. What do you say to that?
We have women dying around this country because of these abortion bans that are put into place. We know that women, no matter where they live, have certain rights, as all Americans do under our Constitution. We know how important it is for women to be able to travel for work or decide to choose a college because it's the right college for them, or visit a friend for a week. And if something happens while they're traveling somewhere in the country, we don't want their life to be at risk because a bunch of politicians decided to impose their own ideology, which is quite an extreme ideology, on women. This is about whether women can get health care, whether we want doctors and women to make these decisions together. And, you know, right now what we're hearing in New Hampshire, what doctors tell me and what moms and dads tell me is that they've got their daughters looking at life decisions, what kind of birth control they're going to get, whether they go to college in certain states, whether they travel throughout our country, because they are so scared of the ramifications of these laws. Women can be trusted. We know what a pregnancy is. These are much wanted pregnancies that we're hearing about where something went wrong. And politicians didn't go to medical school. They shouldn't be making these decisions.
New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan, thank you.
Thank you.